Welcome back to Slim Bits. So this episode should be covering the penultimate episode here, but instead I'm going to be taking this opportunity to talk about two things, and reiterating on a point that I made in an earlier episode, because two characters that I haven't really had much of a chance to talk about, they are both dying in this episode, so I kind of want to get that out. So I mentioned before about how I felt the horror game franchises were a little underrepresented. They were only they only featured zombies and not things like ghosts or werewolves or skeleton warriors or giant monsters or anything else that you would associate with a horror game. And I bring that up because very soon we're going to get our first look at the zombies of the horror game faction. So you'll notice that they were kind of they're not even designed after a lot of the zombies that you'd see in games. Like, they're not the Crimson Heads from Resident Evil. They're not the red-headed, gray-skinned zombies from Super Ghouls and Goblins, or the cloak-wearing ones from Castlevania even. So they're kind of like green, dopey, misshapen, slow-moving, and they can be destroyed in one hit. So they're more of a nuisance than a credible threat to Rob here. And that I kind of found an interesting or an excuse for that. So Playsylvania is this world where there's a thing called extra life, and it's this natural resource that gives people gives a long life or prolonged life. It heals all wounds. It runs all machineries. It's like this magical cure-all. Essentially, people can't die in Playsylvania, or if they are killed by accident or what have you, they will come back to life almost instantaneously, just as they were before, completely unharmed. It's their extra life. So if people can't die, what is the role of death, and how do we get zombies? I figured that, much like in Resident Evil, the zombies aren't a supernatural occurrence. They are the result of some, twisted bioengineering or experiment gone wrong. So Dr. Hideo Spectre, who leads the horror game faction, who is named after Metal Gear Solid creator Hideo Kojima and famed designer Warren Spector, only as an excuse so I can call the character Hideo Spectre, Hideous Spectre. He is the only member of the horror tribe who is actually natural. Everyone else is just this bad experiment of his. When he aligns with Killscreen and his plan to steal all the extra life, he joins a sort of this this mad scientist, fringe science character, but also with the incentive of being, with there being no more extra life, that means people can stay dead. That means a lot more bodies for him to experiment on. And you'll notice the result of that when you see what happens to Tim. When he is reanimated as a zombie, he's more vicious and he attacks Rob outright. And I'd wager that he's a little bit more durable. So I think that having Dr. Spectre involved on the Killscreen side gives his army a bit more of a scare factor, but also hits home just what exactly would happen if Rob were to lose. Okay, and before I jump into the monster version of Gilbert here, who is sort of modeled after the Nemesis character from Resident Evil 3, you can see it right there with the surgical scar running down his face, and when he has his tendrils, which are modeled after the Day of the Tentacle, that's also a reference to the Nemesis. But I want to talk quickly about Tim, who was sort of the 11th hour last character who I designed and knew what to do with in the story. It took up until his very first scene to know who this guy was, and really even what he should look like, because I really didn't know how I wanted the representative or the leader of the sports game faction to look and behave. Because who is a well-known character who is originally from a sports title that I could use as a design template for a Gamer of Destiny character? I didn't want to use an existing athlete, and I didn't want to use Mario, who's even though he's been in a ton of sports games, he's not an original sports character. And I didn't want to use Little Mac from Punch-Out because we had Cliff, who's leading the fighter tribe, and I didn't want two fighters in the Resistance. So I got to the point where I was thinking, maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. Instead of looking for a sports personality in a video game, what if I were to find a sports personality in the real world who was tangibly associated with video games? So I thought to myself, okay, what is something that all sports have? Well, they have referees. Around that time, the King of Kong was on TV. And that's when I had my eureka moment. In the awesome documentary, The King of Kong, one of the prominent subjects is a man named Walter Day. He is the owner of the arcade mecca Twin Galaxies. He is the designated keeper of the official high scores for nearly every classic arcade game known to man. And he's been doing that since the early 80s. He sets the rules for competitions, he awards the prizes, he organizes the tournaments, and does all the record keeping. And he does all this while wearing a referee shirt. Like, holy crap, like, that idea was just staring me in the face this entire time. So not only did I find the look for my character, I had the personality too. He would be like the old guard, the sage, the calm and rational one whenever Cliff or Stevie butted heads. You know, he was someone who knew Pennsylvania's history because he lived it. And because he leads all the athletes, he has a greater sense of cooperation and hard work and tradition. Yeah, his inclusion was really like an 11th hour save. Like, Tim was very close to getting cut from the script, as were any references to sports game factions. But I'm glad I hesitated. Not only because like that was such an obvious idea in hindsight, but because I think doing that reaffirmed that this project was something that would pay homage to anything that has to do with gaming. You know, be they the fictional characters and worlds or the very real people who help popularize them. And I should probably mention that Tim is named after the designer Tim Schafer, who is just a great storyteller and joke teller through gaming, and Ralph Baer, who is credited as the man who invented the game cartridge. So we're nearly done the episode, so I'm just going to wrap this up as best I can. So Cliff realized that he was mistaken about Rob, and he has a newfound respect for him. He breaks free and manages to keep Monster Gilbert away from Rob long enough so that Rob can get to the top of the tower and face Killscreen alone. This sequence was a lot better looking in my head. I think a lot had to happen in a very short amount of time. And to be perfectly honest, during this time when making the episode, I was a little burnt out, and I just kind of wanted to get to the finish line here. So that's why the fight between Cliff and Gilbert itself is kind of sloppy looking, and why Rob's little rampage while he's dual-wielding the two laser pistols is kind of cheap looking. One bit of the art that I didn't skimp on, you know, and like as I've said before, like I'm not a proper animator or a proper artist. I'm just doing this like, you know, for the hell of it, for the fun of it. But one thing I am kind of proud of is how accurate I got that platform that Rob and Killscreen are standing on. That platform is based on the Final Destination platform from Super Smash Bros. Melee, and I had to find anyone who could do a better job at tracing that thing by hand than I did. So anyways, thanks for listening to this episode of Slim Bits on Gamer of Destiny Episode 6. The next episode will be the finale of Gamer of Destiny, so look forward to that. Bye.